On this edition of FedGov Today, shoring up the Pentagon's supply chain and a multi-billion-dollar bet on the defense industrial base. The leader of the Pentagon's venture capital fund is here. Welcome to a special FedGov Today in Washington, D.C. and around the world on the American Forces Network. I'm Francis Rose. The Pentagon will commit more than $1 billion in a loan to a Silicon Valley battery company. It's the latest action from the department's Office of Strategic Capital. David Lorch is director of the OSC. David, welcome. Thanks for joining me
Thank
today.
you.
It's great to have you on the program. Thank you for welcoming us to your office. What
Absolutely.
is the mission of OSC?
The mission of OSC is to serve as a bridge between capabilities that are needed for our U.S. national security and what's viable to address shortages and gaps in our supply chain in the private sector. So we're evaluating various sectors for where there are shortages, gaps, and vulnerabilities that impact U.S. national security. Then we're looking to provide capital in order to bridge between the needs and what's available in the private sector today.
How do you determine what those are? What's the framework for you to go out into the marketplace and determine where you want to put those investments?
Absolutely. So most of our team is from the private sector, has limited experience with government. So we're really following the lead of the department experts in terms of the various domains where there are supply chain gaps and vulnerabilities. So, for example, in the area of critical minerals and materials, the acquisitions and sustainment department under Mike Duffy has mapped out the entire mineral supply chain and identified where there are shortages. And so that's the guide for us in terms of where we're looking for transactions that can help address those shortages.
Within each of those areas that you just outlined, how do you evaluate which specific technologies are necessary and how you want to go about acquiring those or directing the investments?
Absolutely. So we have regular conversations with various experts and constituents, both in the research and engineering department, acquisitions and sustainment, as well as the services, where they're giving us information about where they have supply chain gaps and vulnerabilities. And so in one end, we're getting that feedback from the department. We're also having companies that are applying for loans. And when those companies apply for a loan, we bring those opportunities to those same constituents in the services in R&E and A&S in order to get their steer in terms of how critical the shortage area is that that company purports to address and how well positioned that particular technology or capability is to address the shortage that we have.
It sounds like then maybe to boil it down, you get a demand signal, whether the company's approaching you or you're approaching them, you have a demand signal from one of the services or another part of the department to say,
Yes,
we need some of this, help us get what we
that's
need.
correct. That's correct.
Is this a step that you're taking to try to address the whole valley of death problem that companies have had for probably since there have been companies that try to work with the department?
That certainly is an apt description, and in many of the areas. At the beginning of the conversation, you referenced the loan we recently made to a company called Sila that has an ability to make battery components from silicon, and we have supply of silicon, adequate supply of silicon right here in the United States, whereas the traditional product that this battery component is made of is graphite that needs to be imported from abroad. And so that represents a supply chain vulnerability as opposed to an opportunity to build that capability right here in the United States. The challenge is that because this is a new battery technology, there's fluctuations in market prices that would make it difficult for this company to build productive manufacturing capacity without support from Office of Strategic Capital. If this company were not have to receive support from OSC, their capabilities might have been built out over decades. That would leave us vulnerable for foreign inputs for a long period of time. Whereas through the OSC loan, we're able to accelerate this company's business plan and put them in a position to produce product right here in the United States on a faster basis.
Take me through what one of these transactions looks like from the very beginning. Company applies for a loan, or you identify a company that it has potential, to company pays back the loan.
Well, one thing I'd point out is that we apply the same methodology that we do in the private sector, just with a different goal. In the private sector, the goal is to buy low, sell high. Effectively, it's to make a profit. Here, our sole goal is US national security. So everything we're evaluating is from the lens of US national security. The primary question we have is this particular company making a product or generating a capability that really does solve a critical shortage area? How well positioned is the company to address that shortage area? And how critical is that shortage area for US national security? Those are the questions that we start with. And so we work very much hand in hand with the rest of the War Department, particularly A&S and R&E, as well as with the services.
When you first connect with a company, who all is involved in evaluating? So we'll take the battery company that we've talked about already. Who was involved in evaluating the technology that they had to ascertain that it was indeed a good fit with where the department needs to go, or a shortage that they had?
Absolutely. So to evaluate that company, we put together an interagency group of experts that included the battery expert from R&E, the battery expert from A&S, the battery expert from the Army, the battery expert from the Air Force, the battery expert from the Navy. Uh, uh, Department of Commerce CHIPS office had a battery expert there. Department of Energy had a battery expert. So we gathered that entire group. We did one meeting with the company. There was several hours to do a technology review, and the company emerged very strong from that meeting with unanimous view across that interagency group that this was a technology that was very good and could address the supply chain gaps and vulnerabilities we have in the United States.
Do the companies come to you in varying states of progress in research and development and so on? Or do you find that there's kind of a common theme or a common position on their journeys at which they connect with you?
No, I think the answer to your question is yes. We have a variety of companies in different stages of development that come to us, and we'll work with them as a concierge to figure out if that company's particular stage of development, if they're well suited for a loan from OSC, if they might be more well suited for support from DARPA or DIU or elsewhere in the interagency, whether that be Department of Energy, DFC, XM. So we want to find solutions when there's a company that can address a critical need, and we're happy to help, whether it's a fit directly for OSC or whether we're introducing them to one of our interagency partners.
Let's take a break and come back and continue that conversation in just a moment. More of my discussion with David Lorch when FedGov Today continues in just a moment.
A lot of the work that they're doing now is to say, I'm going to spend less time agonizing over the requirements, and what I'm going to define to industry is my needs. Not the requirements of what you need to build, but the problem I need to have solved. And again, part of this acquisition reform is that they're willing to take on a little bit of acquisition risk to reduce operational risk.
Innovation doesn't wait, and neither do we. At Maximus, we solve problems, streamlining operations, delivering solutions at speed and scale that drive measurable results. From strategy to execution, we simplify complexity, building trust through expertise and innovative technology. Every service, every time. Efficient government delivered. We don't follow innovation, we drive it. Maximus.
sometimes you're trying to over-design solutions that maybe the customer or your end user is very happy with, but leaving security out of the question. So, confidentiality, integrity, and all of that things about the data are maybe thrown to the wayside. So you have to find a good tension point to bring the two together to make sure that your products are secure and protecting the data that it needs to.
Welcome back. My conversation continues now with David Lorch, Director of the Office of Strategic Capital at the Pentagon. We were talking a moment ago about, you kind of laid out a spectrum of possibilities, that your office is not necessarily the only one that a company that wants to present its abilities, its capabilities, and its products to the Pentagon. How do you and how do your colleagues across that spectrum do the evaluation to determine this company's right for us, maybe a loan from OSC, maybe we want to hand these folks off to DARPA, or one of the other options that you laid out?
Absolutely. So Congress gave Office of Strategic Capital 34 areas that we're legally supposed to focus on. And so sometimes a company might come to us looking for financing in an area that's interesting, that could be important, but it's not one of the 34 areas that fall within our authorities. So when that happens, we'll bring that opportunity to interagency partners. Typically, if it is not necessarily a Department of War focus, we'll bring that opportunity to XM or DFC. If it's a Department of War focus, but maybe it's an earlier stage company, then would be appropriate for a loan from OSC. Maybe it's a company that's looking for seed financing. Maybe it's a company that doesn't have a product yet. But is in the stages of ideating their technology. DARPA and DIU have programs that are well suited to those opportunities, and partnering with individuals in that stage of development for their company.
If you have 34 areas that legislatively you have jurisdiction over, how do you prioritize among those 34 areas? Right now, you want to look at battery technology. Right now, you want to look at scandium is important for reasons that are explained. Do those change over time? And how do you determine, if they do, these are the, I don't know, 5, 10, 20 that we want to focus on for the moment? And then, okay, maybe we're okay on a couple of these now, and we want to focus on some of the others.
Absolutely. The priorities do change, and we're getting the priorities from the War Department. So we're sitting with the Office of the Secretary. We're sitting with the Office of the Deputy Secretary. We're sitting with leaders in the services. We're sitting with research and engineering and ANS, and we're hearing from them what are their priorities in the supply chains that they're focused on. And that's giving us guidance as to where we should focus. We're also in the process of rolling out a white paper process where we're going to publish white papers in each of our core verticals that identify for the public what are our core priorities, what are we seeking as OSC in terms of funding opportunities within each of those core verticals. So that's something that's in process and is under an effort led by OSC, but in coordination with other parts of the department.
As those white papers come out, what do you hope to message through those, to not just to the public, but I imagine one of the targets is going to be, hey, companies that are working in these areas, this is really explicit instruction as to what we want. Is that a fair read on my part?
You've got it exactly right. We want to be letting companies know where we're focused on funding, where we're aggressively seeking opportunities to put funding to work in order to address national security vulnerabilities. One thing to keep in mind is Office of Strategic Capital is focused on dual use applications. So that means that we're oftentimes serving the tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 supplier who's making parts, pieces, and components that ultimately go into important U.S. national security supply chains. Critical minerals and materials is a great example of that.
How does what you're doing comport with the Secretary's order to look at commercial first? I imagine that dual use is a really important component of that.
Absolutely. We're completely aligned with the secretary's orders and priorities, and we're really following what he lays out in terms of focus areas for the department.
How how involved is the work that you do with helping companies once you've made a loan investment in a company to work through the acquisition process if they're at a point where they have a technology that's ready to go, the departments or one of the services has determined we want that. Does your organization have a role in helping them bridge that gap
It does
too?
not. We really stay heads down, very focused on our mission. We're collaborating with the services. We're getting inputs from them in terms of which companies are important, what the capabilities of different companies are. In many cases, folks at the services, folks in acquisitions have been dealing with these companies for decades. And so that really provides a great base of information for us to work with.
You mentioned earlier in the conversation that your team is mostly comprised of people from the investment community, not from the defense community. How has that informed, and how your that's your experience
Yeah.
too. How has that informed the way that you go about doing these evaluations and doing these and making these loans? Does it work the same? You said obviously the desired measure is different. It's not profit. You're going for national security gain. But other than that, is it pretty much the same process that you would use in the VC world?
It's very similar. It's very similar. We're applying the same process, but the the core question starts with national security fit, which is not part of a traditional private sector analysis. So it's the process is different in terms of the first gate a company needs to pass through is solely oriented around national security fit. And we put an immense amount of energy and we really benefit from our partnership with the War Department broadly in making that analysis. But in terms of other aspects of the analysis, structuring a credit agreement, working through a financial analysis, that is really borrowing the skills that our team gained in the private sector.
I read in the Wall Street Journal about the latitude that you have pay as far as paying people to get people to basically come, mostly from New York, I imagine, to come here and do this kind of work. Has that been the biggest challenge in recruiting? Is the opportunities that people have in the private sector versus what public sector work is able to offer them?
I think the great news is there's a lot of patriotic Americans. Um, it's on OSC to get the word out and let people know about this opportunity. It's not something. I mean, the office is relatively new. The funding really came together in for this year, 2026, in terms of expanded loan authority, expanded credit subsidy, and so this is all relatively new, and we're trying to get the word out. But the good news is we've had really fantastic people, numerous people who've taken seven-figure pay cuts who are coming down from New York to do this, and we really want to be of service. We know what we know and what we don't know, and that's why we partner so closely with other parts of the department, since we can bring to bear our backgrounds from the private sector. But as you said, the vast majority of our team, this is their first experience in government.
We have just a few more minutes left, so stand by and I'll continue my conversation with David Lorch when FedGov Today comes right back.
What are those automated connections that allow us to build those same interfaces that we enjoy today with cellular devices, Wi-Fi type systems? If we're provisioned and we have access, we should be connected, whether we're at an installation here at home or an installation abroad or in a tactical type environment where now We just turned on our systems, and I've been provisioned and authenticated on the account, and I can communicate with anybody in the world because we built those accesses to build maneuver space in that spectrum.
For a CIO, one of the use cases that I'm leveraging AI to solve is how can I build faster leveraging AI? You know, the traditional software development cycle takes 18 months. How can I leverage AI to bring it to 18 weeks?
Kind of the next phase of maturity that you'll start to see is AI patterns. And so you'll have a specific kind of pattern, like let's say unstructured data validation and form submission agent, that you can actually apply that pattern to multiple different domains.
Department of the Air Force just released our first AI strategy, and it focuses on accelerating AI in every mission that we have in the department, both in the air and space forces. So AI first is a really key principle that is outlined in that strategy.
Welcome back. My conversation continues now with David Lorch, Director of the Office of Strategic Capital at the Pentagon. We talked a little bit in the last part of our conversation about your team and who makes up your team. What makes somebody a good fit for the work that you're doing here?
Mission-oriented, humble, wanting to partner with the services and the department, hardworking and smart.
It seems like a pretty straightforward list, David.
I think it is. I think it is.
When you measure success in this organization a year out, 2 years out, 3 years, you mentioned earlier you get a big cash infusion budget-wise this fiscal year. How will you measure that either the portfolio of loans that you've made, individual loans that you've made, or whatever, that this is working the way that you wanted it to work and you're getting the desired results?
If we've put our loan authority to work by providing loans to companies that are leading to national security gaps and vulnerabilities being closed, that is our mission. That is the rubric that we're focused on addressing first and foremost.
What do you do now to kind of keep touch with the stakeholders that you've outlined in our conversation so far to make sure that they're getting on the back end what you helped provide to them on the front end?
As part of this white paper process that we talked about, that involves very close and regular collaboration with these stakeholders to understand what are changes. You asked earlier about changes in priorities we need to engage with, and we are engaging with these stakeholders to understand updates in terms of their needs and priorities, and talk about how the investments made to date, the path those investments are on to generating these capabilities that can address shortages. So it's an ongoing and evolving conversation that's happening on a regular basis.
Do you have any gaps in capacity, either number of people or skill sets or whatever, that would help you get to your goal and fulfill your mission, deliver on mission better?
Well, we're looking for associates, vice presidents, managing directors, and senior managing directors. So all are welcome to apply. We are continuing to build out the team so we can prosecute this important mission of addressing shortage areas and vulnerabilities in the supply chain that's relevant to U.S. national security.
I asked you a moment ago what success would look like from an organizational perspective. Strictly personally, there will come a time where you step down and move on to something else. How will you judge that you personally accomplished what you hoped to accomplish when you took this job?
Just the same that I mentioned for the organization. If we can execute our mission, which is making these investments to address shortages and vulnerabilities, that's literally what we're focused on from morning to night, every day.
David Lorch, thanks very much for joining me today, and thanks for hosting us in your office.
Thanks for the opportunity. I appreciate it.
You can read more about all the things David and I covered and more about the Office of Strategic Capital on today's show page at fedgovtoday.com. FedGov Today continues in just a moment.
The technology exists today to do all of that data sharing with the right governance and with the right controls to allow an analyst or someone who needs access to the data to get it live in real time.
This is a structural change in how folks think about how we interact with technology, what our role is in the kill chain, in the OODA loop, however you want to describe it, but kind of where the human sits in that.
Concern is that if we use AI from an everyday standpoint, whether it's part of our daily processes or how you get answers to certain questions, let's say a chatbot, what is my policy? But my concern is that the more we rely on it, and the more we're depending on it, the more it becomes a high value target.
Welcome back. Coming next on ABC7 in Washington, it's the new episode of the FedGov Today series, Modernizing Government, the EY Insight. The new episode's titled Cyber by Design, Modernizing for a Resilient Future. Justin Hubert of the Federal Transit Administration and Rob Brome of EY will lay out the components of a successful cyber strategy for now and for the future. If you're watching in Washington, don't do anything. The show's coming next. If you're watching online or on AFN, you can see the new episode at modernizinggovernment.com.
Able to really concentrate on the mission and how do they add value from a CFO perspective. And so EY, we have really taken this sort of blended approach around how we work with agencies by utilizing some of our AI tools. We have also developed data analytics solutions, right, to embed in agencies as well. And so whether it's our LEA tool, which is our leadership insights analytics data analytics, which is sort of an enterprise-wide data transformation tool. We have our public funds management solution, which is really a blockchain, which we're very excited, a blockchain solution that allows us to trace funds across the organization.
FedGov Today TV returns next Sunday morning at 10. I'm Francis Rose. I'll see you then. Thanks for watching.